Tuesday had no intention of being memorable. It was supposed to be another unremarkable day, a meeting with a client I was already late for, a step in the endless grind. Nothing about the morning hinted at betrayal lurking just ahead. But life doesn't mark disasters on your calendar. They simply arrive, unannounced and relentless. Halfway to the meeting, a peculiar impulse tugged at me. Call it intuition, a gut feeling, or just the subconscious piecing things together before my conscious mind could. It whispered, "Stop by the Brood Awakening." That coffee shop wasn't even on my route. Lisa, my wife, and I used to go there often, though lately, she hadn't had time, claiming work was overwhelming. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the place. But that strange, insistent nudge had me turning the wheel. The lot was crowded, the hum of caffeine and chatter palpable even before I stepped inside. The hiss of the espresso machine mingled with laughter and conversation. I scanned the booths almost instinctively, not really expecting to find anything. Then my stomach lurched, as if gravity itself had shifted. There she was, Lisa. Her hand brushed another man's arm in a gesture that felt too familiar, too intimate. She leaned in closer to him, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. It wasn't just any man. That would have been almost tolerable. No, the man sitting across from her was Greg, our neighbor. Greg, the guy who loaned me tools with a grin that always felt rehearsed. Greg, who was married to Lisa's best friend, Jenny. I froze, the scene before me crystallized in a haze of disbelief, fury, and bitter amusement at the sheer absurdity of it all. My first instinct was to storm over, make a scene, demand answers. But another part of me, cold, vindictive, decided otherwise. This wasn't the time for confrontation. Not yet. I walked back to my car, fumbling with my phone as I called my brother, Mike. "Mike," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "I'm about to kill someone." "You got bail money?" He paused, his tone as calm as ever. "Slow down. Who's the target? And do you really want to end up in county lockup tonight?" I explained the situation, barely keeping my voice steady. Mike let out a low whistle. "All right," he said finally. "No violence. Get proof. Go home. We'll figure it out." Taking a deep breath, I went back inside and found a vantage point, a booth across from theirs. The man sitting there gave me a puzzled look, but I mumbled something about an urgent matter, and he left. From my new spot, I had a clear view of them. Their heads leaned close together, hands brushing, smiles exchanged. It was like watching a bad soap opera unfold. I pulled out my phone, the anger making my hands tremble as I snapped a picture. There they were, caught in the act. Lisa looked so carefree, as though she wasn't shattering two lives with every whispered word. I left quietly, determined to let her think she'd gotten away with it. It made what I was planning even sweeter. On the way out, I sent Mike the photo with a single caption, "Got them." His reply came almost immediately, "Perfect." What followed were days of feigned ignorance. Lisa carried on as if nothing had happened, as if she weren't betraying the man who trusted her or the best friend who confided in her. She laughed at her shows, scrolled through her phone, and made casual conversation about the neighbors. "Everything okay?" she asked once, her tone light, maybe even concerned. "Yeah," I said with a shrug. "Just one of those weeks. The universe has a way of revealing its secrets." The line seemed to unnerve her. She hesitated but didn't press. Meanwhile, Mike and I were scheming. When I showed him the picture of Lisa and Greg, he studied it for a long moment before breaking into a grin. "We're not going to half-ass this," he said. "If you want revenge, we're going nuclear." His suggestion? A digital billboard. At first, I thought he was joking. "A billboard? Like a cheesy ad for a divorce lawyer?" "Not quite," he replied, the grin widening. "We're going to announce their relationship in style." By the time we finished brainstorming, the plan was both petty and brilliant. We designed a mock engagement announcement, complete with glowing hearts and elegant fonts. At the center of it was the photo I'd taken of Lisa and Greg in the coffee shop, their hands brushing in what they thought was secrecy. The text was simple and scathing: "Congratulations on your new relationship. Love, Dan." We chose a prominent billboard in the heart of the city, right by a cluster of busy restaurants and shops. It wasn't cheap, but this wasn't about money, it was about making a statement. On Friday night, the slide went live. Mike and I parked nearby, waiting for the moment it lit up the skyline. When it did, I laughed, a deep, cathartic sound I hadn't made in days. People stopped to gawk, pointing and taking pictures. Cars slowed as drivers tried to make sense of the glowing message. It was everything I'd hoped for. But the real masterpiece was dinner that evening. I invited Lisa to a steakhouse, conveniently located next to the billboard. Greg and Jenny were also invited, along with Mike. The seating arrangement was deliberate. Lisa and Jenny had an unobstructed view of the sign, while Mike and I sat opposite them. The meal began uneventfully, polite chatter, forced smiles. Then Lisa glanced out the window. She froze. Her face drained of color, her hand gripping her wine glass like a lifeline. Her eyes flickered between the billboard and her plate, panic spreading across her features. "Are you okay?" I asked, feigning concern. I don't feel well," she stammered, pushing back her chair. "I need to use the restroom." Jenny started to rise. "Do you want me to come with you?" Lisa shook her head and fled, leaving her napkin crumpled on the table. Mike leaned in, his smirk widening. "You think she's figured it out yet?" "She's either panicking or having a stroke," I replied. "Either way, I'm good." Minutes later, Jenny's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, confusion morphing into shock. She gasped, loud enough to turn heads. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, holding her phone out. It was a photo of the billboard, sent by someone with the message, "WTF is going on with Greg and Lisa?" I barely suppressed a smile. "Wow," I said, feigning surprise. "That's something." Jenny turned to Greg, her expression a mix of betrayal and fury. He stammered, his face turning crimson as he fumbled for words. But there were no words. Not for this. Tuesday was supposed to be ordinary, a day like any other, full of monotony and obligations. I had a meeting with a client scheduled and was already running late. Nothing about that morning hinted at the unraveling storm about to hit my life. But, as they say, fate doesn't bother with formal invitations. I was halfway to the meeting when an inexplicable impulse tugged at me, a nagging whisper in the back of my mind. Call it intuition, gut instinct, or some subconscious alarm, but it wouldn't let go. Against all reason, it told me to stop by the Brood Awakening, a coffee shop my wife Lisa and I often frequented. She wasn't supposed to be there. She had told me she'd be drowning in work all week. Yet something about this feeling pushed me to take the detour. The parking lot was packed, the hum of caffeine-fueled conversations spilling out of the entrance. Inside, the aroma of freshly brewed espresso mingled with the soft hiss of the machines. I scanned the crowd, a force of habit. Then, like a sucker punch to the gut, I saw her. Lisa was there, seated in a corner booth, leaning in close to another man. Her laughter floated through the air, her hand brushing his arm like I didn't exist. My heart twisted. It wasn't just any man either. It was Greg, our neighbor. Greg, who always lent me his tools with a rehearsed smile. Greg, who was married to Lisa's best friend, Jenny. I stood there, frozen, disbelief battling with fury in my chest. My first instinct was to storm over, to shatter their little charade. But a colder, sharper part of me, one fueled by vengeance, not rage, prevailed. I slipped outside and called my brother, Mike. "Mike," I said, my voice strained with a dangerous calm. "I'm about to kill someone. Do you have bail money?" His voice, steady as ever, cut through the chaos in my head. "Slow down. Who's the target? And do you really want to spend the night in lockup?" I explained the situation, my words dripping with controlled anger. After a pause, Mike let out a low whistle. "All right," he said, his tone sharp with purpose. "Here's the deal. No violence. Get proof. Go home. We'll figure this out." It wasn't what I wanted to hear. But he was right. So I swallowed the anger boiling in my chest, walked back inside, and slid into a booth directly across from theirs. The stranger who had been sitting there looked at me, startled, but I mumbled something about an emergency, and he graciously moved. From this vantage point, I had a clear view of their intimate display. They leaned in close, their hands brushing, whispering to each other with the kind of closeness that belonged in bad romance films. It was textbook infidelity, blatant and shameless. My stomach churned, but I reached for my phone, my fingers steady despite the storm inside me. The camera clicked, capturing their betrayal forever. Lisa looked carefree, laughing as if she didn't have a husband who trusted her waiting at home. I left without confronting her, letting her think she had fooled me. As I drove away, I sent the photo to Mike with a simple caption, "Got them." His reply came almost immediately, "Perfect. Let's go nuclear." The following days were a delicate act. I played the part of the clueless husband flawlessly. Lisa went about her routines, scrolling through her phone, laughing at her favorite shows, and chatting about mundane things. She even asked me once if I was okay. "Just one of those weeks," I said with a shrug, masking my disdain. Meanwhile, Mike and I were crafting the ultimate revenge. The centerpiece of our plan? A digital billboard. At first, I thought he was joking. "A billboard? What, like one of those tacky divorce lawyer ads?" I asked. "Not quite," he said, grinning. "This one's going to be memorable. We designed it together, a bright, glowing monstrosity that looked like an engagement announcement. The slide was adorned with hearts and elegant script. But instead of celebrating love, it showcased the damning photo of Lisa and Greg, seated at that coffee shop. Below the image, the words read, "Congratulations on your new relationship. Love, Dan." We paid extra for primetime slots on a prominent billboard downtown, right near the busiest restaurants and shopping centers. On Friday night, Mike and I parked nearby, waiting for our masterpiece to light up. When it did, I couldn't help but laugh. It was glorious, a glowing beacon of humiliation. People stopped to stare, some taking photos, others pointing and laughing. But the piece de resistance was dinner. I invited Lisa to join me at a steakhouse that evening, conveniently located near the billboard. I also invited Greg and Jenny, under the guise of a friendly couple's dinner. Mike, of course, came along for the ride. The seating arrangement was strategic. Lisa and Jenny had a clear view of the sign, while Mike and I sat across from them, enjoying the unfolding drama. The meal started with awkward small talk, but soon, Lisa's gaze drifted toward the billboard. Her brow furrowed, her expression shifting from confusion to horror. She gripped her wine glass so tightly, I thought it might shatter.
"Are you all right?"
I asked, feigning concern. I need to use the restroom," she stammered, bolting from the table. Jenny, oblivious to the connection, leaned in and whispered, "Is she okay?" Moments later, Jenny's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her expression twisting into shock. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, holding her phone out for Greg to see. It was a photo of the billboard, already circulating on social media. Greg turned crimson, stammering out weak denials as Jenny's fury ignited. She stormed off toward the restroom, dragging Greg behind her like a condemned man. Mike leaned back, smirking. "You couldn't script this better." Lisa didn't return to the table. Jenny left shortly after, dragging Greg in her wake.
"And me?"
I paid the check, walked out with Mike, and left the billboard glowing in their absence. By Monday morning, Lisa's life was in shambles. The billboard had gone viral, spreading her betrayal to every corner of the city. She begged me to take it down, her voice breaking with desperation.
"No," I said coldly. "You earned it."
The divorce was swift and ruthless. Lisa tried to apologize, to salvage what she destroyed, but I had no interest in listening. By the end of the week, she was gone, out of the house, out of my life, and hopefully out of town.
As for me, I moved on.
I sold the house and started fresh, leaving behind the ruins of a life I no longer wanted. The billboard may have been petty, but it gave me closure. And I wouldn't have changed a thing.